Have you heard of the RASCEF prompting model? Well, I hadn't either, and I looked into it, and there's several benefits and reasons why this prompting technique is actually taking the place of even fine-tuning models, and I'm going to tell you why. So let's define what this prompting model actually is all about. So first, we'll start with the R. R means role, and with this part of the prompt, you're going to define who or what the model should be for the task. So something like you're a career coach that specializes in technical interviews, and this establishes that tone, that expertise, and that point of view that this agent should be using. Then there's the A. A stands for action, and what you're going to do with this part of the prompt is you're going to clearly state what the model needs to do. So for example, you'd say, summarize the candidate's strengths and weaknesses, or something along those lines. And what this does, it makes the task concrete and prevents those kind of vague answers that you could get from an AI set. And then you're going to go to the steps. And with this part of the prompt, you're going to provide a clearly ordered set of steps that the model can follow logically. So for things like this interviewing, you can say, 1, review the candidate's resume. 2, compare the experience to the job description. 3, identify the gaps or mismatches. And 4, suggest improvements or questions we can ask. What this does is it scaffolds that reasoning process for the model so that it takes these steps in the correct order. Then for C, you're going to provide it some context. So supply that necessary background information, maybe some data, maybe some constraints that it should have. So for example, tell it the specifics of the role you're trying to source for maybe. So say this role is a back-end engineer at a fintech company, whatever you need. And what this does is it helps the model stay relevant and accurate for that particular input. And then you're going to give it some examples. So you're going to show examples of not only the inputs that you're going to give it, but also your desired outputs. And you're going to give it maybe 2 or 3 of those different types of examples. And this is going to provide the model with a pattern to mirror for you. And then, most importantly, for me at least, is you're going to give it that desired format. And what this format is going to show you is it's going to specify how those responses should be structured. So for example, you could give it a prompt to say, return your answer as a 3-paragraph analysis, or in the case of AI agent teams, you could say, structure this response in JSON format, split up by this, and it makes it much easier for you to use inside of your agentic team if you give it a very specific format. This just reduces that ambiguity that you may have, and it just ensures that consistency in outputs. So what the research has been finding is that fine-tuning is actually going by the wayside in many cases, and this type of RASCEF prompting model beats it out. And there's a couple different reasons. First, it leverages that model's reasoning, specifically by guiding it through reasoning with steps. It's not just letting the model go off and think of its own way to do this. You're showing it how it should be thinking about this. And it's also adaptable. So you don't have to use just this one prompt every single time. You can start tuning these things when, as you create a fine-tuned model, that's the only way it's going to operate, and you have to change it every single time going through that expensive process. So it's much lower cost because of that as well. And then what I found to be most beneficial to our customers is that it's model agnostic. Pay for any kind of service that you may want from an actual LLM model, and this will work on that model. And it just improves everything all across the board when we start seeing people take this kind of prompting technique when they're creating agents in their system. So that comes down to RASCEF. You're going to have the role, you're going to have the action, you're going to have the steps, you're going to have the context, you're going to have examples, and then you're going to give it the format. That's what kind of prompting technique I've found has worked the best lately.